DC Comics have got themselves an absolute hit on their hands with the Absolute Universe. Absolute Batman, very well received, pretty much across the board. Obviously, there were detractors, but for the most part, people were happy with that one. Absolute Wonder Woman, to a lesser degree, but it's certainly the best thing Kelly Thompson, the writer on that book, has done in about 7 years. It was acceptable. It was fine. Was it great? I would say no, but other people out there would claim that. But there is that little thing out there where people go, you know what? This feels like the New 52 all over again. This feels like All-Star comic books all over again. This feels like Earth 1 all over again. And it's causing some people out there, specifically at CBR, be like, no, that's not what this is. This is New 52 done the right way. There's so many differences between this and New 52. You can't even compare the two. And I thought it was funny because I'm reading the article. I'm like, hey, what does this guy think about that? And I was like, holy shit, he is not proving his case. In fact, I think he's disproving his case. Not that he didn't make a point or two that were valid, and I'll talk about those kind of towards the end of it, but I think for the most part, his premise on why they're doing this right in comparison to New 52 might be a little bit off, and how he actually is the one that proves that. So let's get into this and have a conversation about why the Absolute Universe, even if you love it, you have to admit, it's kind of like the New 52 all over again. Let's call a spade here. Let's stop bullshitting each other. Let's be honest and start getting real. Let's take it back to the real world with Puck Days. The New 52 reboot, which began in 2011, was incredibly controversial for DC fans for several reasons. While it initially had sales success, in the long term, it was definitely a questionable direction for the company. Now, the Absolute Universe is doing the New 52 correctly by slowly rolling out distinctly different takes on familiar heroes in their own world. The biggest issue with the New 52 was inherent in the concept, as it erased what was, at that point, over 2 decades worth of continuity. This meant that some of the most beloved runs and storylines featuring DC heroes were erased from continuity, despite how much they had defined those brands. An interesting thesis there, that the New 52, the problem wasn't the concept or the versions of the heroes, it was that it made the continuity hard to follow, or it made the continuity a bit ridiculous, and it certainly did that. There's no denying that the New 52 took the DC continuity and threw it into disarray. Depending on the title, it might have even been worse. You know, Batman had 2 or 3 Robins in 5 years. Made no sense whatsoever. But I think there are more issues with it, and it is the concept itself. There's a shelf life when you come to these like edgier, more extreme versions of heroes. There's a reason no one's talking about Injustice anymore. Injustice at one point was very, very popular. Evil Superman, you get Injustice, had video games, probably had a cartoon or something like that, certainly had comic books based on it, and there were successes generated by that idea, but eventually it did run its course. The same thing with The Dark Knight Returns. The Dark Knight Returns, considered by a lot of people to be the greatest Batman story of all times. Not me. I think Batman Year One is better, but The Dark Knight Returns is certainly one of the best versions of Batman we've ever got. That's a great story there, and we got lots of sequels. What happens with the sequels? Now, admittedly, Frank Miller gets older as this goes along. They didn't release the sequels all the time, and we certainly had some quality issues down the end, but it's an edgier version of Batman. He's a little bit more violent. What happens with that? The interest wanes after a while, because while having a new version of the hero that's a little bit more edgy, that can do some of the things that the mainline hero can't do, it does lose its luster over time, and eventually you have to go back to what has worked essentially from the very beginning. I don't think the only reason the New 52 didn't work was because the continuity was bad. I think the concept itself probably was unsustainable in the long term, to where you're taking established heroes and then changing fundamental aspects about them, which is essentially all that they're doing in Absolute Universe. Next up, they state, it didn't help that so many of the New 52's changes sharply differed from what had come before. Examples include Wonder Woman being revealed as Zeus's daughter, the erasure of Martian Manhunter from the Justice League's membership, legacy characters being written out of or egregiously changed, the continuity of the Teen Titans team, and the shoehorning of characters from now CEO Jim Lee's Wildstorm universe into the far different DC universe. While there were successes here and there, and a lot of issues were too much at once for longtime fans. And now we're talking about some of the execution issues rather than just breaking up the continuity, and they make a big point there. These characters were wildly out of character. One of the reasons you like Superman is because you like the characters of Clark Kent and Superman. One of the reasons you're drawn to Batman, besides the badass design and the cool city of Gotham, and he's got the Batmobile and all the toys, at a fundamental level, you like Batman and you like Bruce Wayne. That's why you're drawn to Wonder Woman. It's not a mantle thing. It's not the name Wonder Woman that draws you to it. It's the characteristics. It's the things that behind them. It's the history of the character, the trials and tribulations that they've been through. And once you start removing those aspects of the character, you no longer really have Wonder Woman. You no longer have Batman. You no longer have Superman. You have people calling themselves that. And certainly there are going to be some aspects of the costumes and designs and the city, and some of the toys that are around them that certainly feel like Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman. But eventually, once you deviate too far from the character, people undoubtedly revolt. They do it every single time. And in this case, I would say the Absolute Universe is already diverging the characters to such a degree that it does create a very short shelf life for these characters and where they can go. How extreme are you going to make this Batman? We've already seen that he's driving around a house with a fucking plow on the front of it. We've already seen him blow up 25 people and murder them. Like, how extreme are we going with this Batman? Is he going to start torturing people? Maybe he can waterboard some people. What can he do? Maybe he can kill some old ladies, some innocent people, and really take this Batman to the edge. You've already taken him pretty far out there on the very first go around. And I do believe, whether it's good or not, and I believe Absolute Batman is good, it does put a predetermined shelf life on it that it's probably not going to be something that's super duper successful in the long term, especially considering the medium in which they're actually releasing it. Next up, he talks, many fans noted that the New 52 was unnecessary in providing younger, more modern takes on the characters. This was largely due to the success of the Superman Earth 1 books that had just come out and helped launch a new universe of alternate takes on characters. Had this line of books set in another universe been pushed in the same manner, it would have made for a healthier and more accepted alternative to what was done with the New 52. At the same time, its format as a series of original graphic novels that came out only occasionally hampered the Earth 1 line, which eventually shuttered. At the same time, its format as a series of original graphic novels that came out ended at the shutter. So there he's saying that one of the reasons it wasn't successful is because you're trying to introduce new, fresher versions of the characters, but you'd already had the Earth 1 series that was kind of already doing that. What have DC Comics been doing for like the last 8 years, maybe even a little bit longer than that? They've been introducing new, fresher, younger versions of the characters. That's why we have entire families for every hero now, because every year or two, they introduce a new, fresher, younger version of the hero. They even did, 5G, Future State, whatever they called it, where John Kent was Superman, Damian Wayne was Robin, Yara Flor was Wonder Woman. We got all the new, fresher, younger takes on these heroes that you could possibly imagine, all within the last 4 years. This happened now too, and it was released in the same format. At least with the Earth 1 graphic novels, it was a different format. And to be completely honest, if you were talking to me like 3 years ago and you wanted to introduce new, different versions of the heroes that could, reach a new audience, a younger demographic, I would have said, do something like the Earth 1 books, make them graphic novels, put them in the preferred format of younger comic book readers, because we were seeing sales absolutely skyrocket in manga and graphic novel format within the bookstore market. Now, we have seen those decline and ebb a little bit. They're still certainly well outpacing floppy comic books, but that would be the format that you would probably want to use at this time. So I think it's crazy to say, like, there's this other thing that it introduced similar concepts and it made it unoriginal. We've been doing that for fucking 15 years now, dude. This has been happening over and over and over again. Remember Jackson Hyde was the new fucking Aquaman? That was 3 years ago, dude. Like, this isn't something where these are new, fresh ideas. This is the same stuff that's happening over and over and over again. In New 52 was unnecessary in providing younger, modern takes on characters. in the same exact manner, in my opinion, that the Absolute Universe is unnecessary in providing younger, modern takes on characters. Yes, will it be interesting initially? Absolutely. Will there be sales? Yes, there will be. There was with the New 52 as well. But eventually, people will return to the stuff that they loved initially, the stuff that was always good, the versions of the characters that have 80 years of history and hundreds of graphic novels and stories about them that are absolutely fantastic. As soon as Scott Snyder gets bored with this, or he hits a creative rut and Absolute Batman isn't good for 6 months, the sales will plummet, the interest will dry up, and people will walk away. And before that even happens, they will have already done that to Absolute Superman and Absolute Wonder Woman, in my opinion. We'll see how this goes, but these are just my predictions of what's going on here. But I do think this dude at CBR is pointing out all the reasons why New 52 failed. These are all the reasons that Absolute Universe is going to fail as well, because it's all the same scenario. All of this stuff has essentially been set up in the exact same manner. He's just not recognizing it because it's the hotness right now. By not making the new Absolute Universe completely override the mainstream DC universe, DC Comics has created an environment wherein both can succeed. This also means that fans of certain characters have more options than ever to read their favorite heroes, even if some incarnations differ. Likewise, these new versions in the Absolute Universe might even attract readers who normally wouldn't check out specific heroes, with the Absolute Superman being a cooler, edgier, big blue Boy Scout. And herein lies the problem. You've created two versions of the heroes, and you have your Superman fans that are there, and they've been there all along. And now you're going to have people come in and say now they're Superman fans because they like the Absolute Universe Superman. Well, the Absolute Universe Superman isn't going to be long for this world. I will be surprised if in 18 months we're getting an announcement of Absolute Superman number 19. I just don't think it's going to happen. And now you've created contention within the fan base because they're still going to be looking for Superman stuff, but they're going to have to go to the real Superman, the one that actually exists within DC Comics. They're going to go over there, and it's not going to be the character that they like. They're going to go to DC Comics and demand that DC change actual Clark Kent into Kal-El or whatever his name's going to be in Absolute Superman, because he's not going to be a Kent. And then you've got contention in the fan base, and it's going to be a bunch of Johnny-come-latelys that think they know everything about Superman, but never actually liked the character to begin with. And I don't think that you could have two competing lines both succeed the exact same time. I just don't think you can. People eventually will have to make a choice. Do you want real Superman, or do you want edgy, cool Superman? And inevitably, like they always do, they will eventually choose the real Superman. The exact same thing happened in the Ultimate Universe. It started out very, very well. They knew exactly what they were doing, creating very cool, true to the character versions of their heroes in a more modern taking universe. You know, with Spider-Man initially, obviously with the Ultimates, and then Ultimate X-Men and all that kind of stuff. And then when they really started veering off from the heart of characters, what happened to the line? It failed because they got a little too far off. And this Absolute Universe is starting essentially where the Ultimate Universe ended last time. And that's why I don't think this is going to get that 8-year run like an Ultimate Universe got the first time when it was very, very successful. It was different, but it was very familiar. This is different, and there will be some familiar elements, kind of, but it won't be all that familiar. They're not going out of their way to tell like the greatest hits and, you know, go replay the hits, you know, with the Avengers with the Ultimates, or Spider-Man with Ultimate Spider-Man and stuff like that. And I don't think that you can actually get two lines with the exact same lineup of heroes and have them both be successful at the same time. It just isn't going to happen. Now let's get to the point where I think the author makes a very valid point that is easily the best one made in the entire article. Another issue with the New 52 was how the reboot was released simultaneously. Instead of releasing batches of titles at a time, the New 52 reboot saw DC release 52 monthly comic books in the same month. For the next few years, this 52 number was maintained, with canceled titles quickly replaced by new ongoing books. Not only was the idea of editing over 50 monthly comic books likely a small nightmare, but it was also a logical question of whether 52 decent to great creative teams were available to work on these titles. They are definitely being smart. There's no denying that DC Comics are being very smart with the rollout by not going too big too soon. Although they admittedly are going much bigger than even the Ultimate Universe is at Marvel, and it's been out for a year. They're going bigger quicker, but they're certainly not going like New 52 big. But that was a line-wide initiative. Everything in continuity was in New 52. And doing 3 books initially in the first 2 months and eventually 4 months out, You get 2 more books, and I think we'll get up to 6 or 7 or something like that, is basically the amount of titles. And if they're all successful, we'll get more than that eventually. There's no doubt about that. I don't think we'll get to that point, but that's certainly where they would like to point. Keeping it smaller, very, very smart. You can actually go out there, curate your creative teams, see who's got the best pitches, who's the best talent available. Oh, your schedule's not working here. We'll hold you off and we'll get you another title some other time, instead of forcing the issue to such a degree that New 52 was. You know, and maintaining 52 ongoing titles is ridiculous. Marvel will release, I don't know, 68 books in a month. 52 of those are not ongoing. Lots of miniseries, one-shots, annuals, specials, all kinds of stuff in there. 52 ongoing titles that all tied into each other was a ridiculous idea. I don't even know what they were thinking when they came up with that idea, and it was pretty fucking stupid. This is a much better, cleaner initiative and will likely be a lot easier to control the narrative of what's going on there, how things are going to work together, and what's affecting what. So there's no denying that. That was much better. But this is where the writer gets a little too ridiculous, even for me. Even titles such as the upcoming Absolute Martian Manhunter will have a lot more hype surrounding them than books in the mainstream DC universe for those characters might, which will help to put said heroes in front of more readers than ever. All right, now we're going ridiculous. I like Martian Manhunter. He's a perfectly good character. Good for a miniseries. You can say he's got an ongoing. It'll never last 2 years. And Absolute Martian Manhunter isn't going to get any hype. He looks like Gumby. Dennis Camp is writing him. I'm going to enjoy it because I'm loving the Ultimates so much. But he's a shitty writer. It doesn't look great. I love the artist on it, but I think he's the wrong guy for this particular job. And there's not going to be like tons of hype surrounding Absolute Martian Manhunter. There just isn't. Let's be honest here. If you wanted to say Absolute Green Lantern or Absolute Flash or something like that, maybe. Absolute Martian Manhunter was a very fucking weird choice. I don't even know what they were thinking. And this is not going to be a success. This will be probably the first one that gets canceled. No doubt about it. It'll be retroactively called a miniseries. It'll go 6 issues. And by then, you know, the Ultimates will be canceled, and then Dennis Camp won't be the flavor of the day anymore. And I'll be shit out of luck, to be completely honest, because I'm loving what that dude is doing on the Ultimates. And I'm actually looking forward to Absolute Martian Manhunter, but not because I think it's going to be hype and it's going to be good, because it's going to be so bad. But I love Dennis Camp. I am the founding member of the Dennis Camp fan club right here on Think Critical Patreon. Probably the only member, but I love that guy, what he's doing. But that's ridiculous. There's not going to be any hype around that. But there you go. Lots of conversations about the New 52 and what makes Absolute Universe a lot different from it. I say, think about it. Read the words that you're saying, and you're going to realize it's basically the New 52 all over again, just a lot smaller, you know, and in another continuity. But it's basically all the same mistakes that doom the New 52 from the beginning, for the most part. Do appreciate your time here today. If you can't get enough of me, and who could blame you? I can't get enough of me, and I get me all the time. You do need to visit me on Think Critical Patreon. You back Think Critical YouTube there. You support us on there. Throw us a little bit of funds. We give you awesome podcasts in return. If you haven't checked it out, there's a link in the video description. Over 4 hours of new content every week that you won't see anywhere else. Lots of fun there. We cover every new comic book release that's of note every single week. And we talk all kinds of other geek stuff with Aaron. It is the place to be. Hope to see you there real soon.